The day Hiroshima survivors realized the rain was poisoned. Part 1, the rain that came from nowhere. The survivors thought the rain would save them. Their skin was burning. Their mouths were dry. The city was on fire. And above Hiroshima, dark clouds were gathering. Then the rain began to fall. Black rain. Thick. Oily. Almost like ink dripping from the sky. People stretched out their hands to catch it. They opened their mouths. They filled cups and buckets. Some washed their burns with it. Others gave it to their children. After all, they had survived the bomb. The rain felt like a miracle. It wasn't. And by the time they realized that, it was already inside them. August 6, 1945. At 8:15 in the morning, life in Hiroshima was still normal. Workers were heading to factories. Students were walking to school. Shop owners were opening their doors. Then a single American bomber appeared overhead. Most people paid little attention. Air raid alarms had become common. Nothing seemed unusual. Then came a flash. Not an explosion. A flash. Brighter than the sun. For a fraction of a second, people thought they had gone blind. Then the shockwave arrived. Windows exploded inward. Buildings collapsed. Wooden homes were torn apart. People were thrown through the air like leaves in a storm. In the center of the city, temperatures rose to unimaginable levels. Clothing burst into flames. Skin burned instantly. Thousands died before they even understood what had happened. But for many survivors, the nightmare was only beginning. Across Hiroshima, people stumbled through the ruins. Some had lost family members. Some had lost their homes. Some had lost entire sections of their skin. Witnesses described people walking silently through the streets. Their clothes burned away. Their faces swollen. Their arms stretched out in front of them. Not because they were reaching for help. Because the burned skin hanging from their arms hurt too much to touch their bodies. Everywhere they looked, the city was burning. Hospitals were destroyed. Doctors were dead. Water pipes had burst. The August heat became unbearable. The survivors needed water. Desperately. Then something strange happened. Hours after the explosion, the sky began to change. Smoke from thousands of fires climbed into the atmosphere. Dust from destroyed buildings filled the air. Ash drifted above the ruined city. The blue sky slowly disappeared. Dark clouds began forming overhead. For many survivors, the clouds brought hope. Rain meant water. Rain meant relief. Rain meant survival. Nobody knew they were watching the birth of something terrifying. And then it started. Large drops fell from the sky. At first, people were confused. The rain wasn't normal. The drops looked dark. Almost black. Some survivors later described it as oily. Others said it stained their skin and clothing. But nobody understood what it meant. How could they? The atomic bomb had been used only once before. No city had ever experienced anything like this. There were no warnings. No instructions. No understanding of what came next. The survivors saw water. And they needed water. Many drank it immediately. Many collected it in containers. Many welcomed it. What they didn't know was that the cloud above Hiroshima was carrying more than smoke and ash. Much more. And over the coming days, the people who drank the rain would begin noticing something deeply disturbing. Symptoms that made no sense. Symptoms doctors couldn't explain. Symptoms that suggested the bomb had not finished killing. Because hidden inside the black rain was an invisible threat nobody could see. The invisible killer. At first, the survivors believed they had escaped. They had survived the explosion. They had survived the fires. They had survived the collapsing buildings. Surely the worst was over. They were wrong. A few days later, something terrifying began to happen. People who had walked away from Hiroshima with only minor injuries suddenly became sick. Not one. Not two. Hundreds. Then thousands. Strong men who had been helping rescue survivors collapsed without warning. Children who had seemed perfectly healthy developed high fevers. Women who had escaped the blast began vomiting without explanation. Doctors were confused. The injuries didn't make sense. Many patients had no serious burns. No broken bones. No visible wounds. Yet they were getting weaker by the hour. Then came an even stranger symptom. Hair. It began falling out. Not a few strands. Entire clumps. People woke up to find their pillows covered with hair. Some ran their fingers through their heads. And handfuls came away. Panic spread across the city. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. Then came the bleeding. Gums. Noses. Mouths. Some developed dark purple spots beneath their skin. Others bled from places with no visible injury. The doctors searched for answers. There were none. Medicines weren't working. Treatments weren't working. Nothing made sense. The bomb had exploded days earlier. Why were people dying now? Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered that the city had been cursed. Others believed poison had been released into the air. Many feared the Black Rain. Families began comparing stories. Did you drink the rain? Did it touch your skin? Did your children play in it? Again and again. The same answer appeared. Many of the sick remembered standing beneath the dark clouds. Many had collected the strange black water. Saved them. No one knew for certain if the rain was responsible. But fear was growing. Across Hiroshima, hospitals were overwhelmed. Those that still stood were packed beyond capacity. Doctors worked without enough medicine. Without enough bandages. Without enough blood. Some doctors became patients themselves. Nurses who cared for the injured suddenly developed the same mysterious symptoms. The illness did not seem to care who you were. Rescue workers became sick. Police officers became sick. Firefighters became sick. People who had rushed into the city to help began collapsing alongside the survivors. The invisible enemy was still spreading. Scientists and military officials soon arrived to investigate. What they found shocked them. The atomic bomb had done far more than destroy buildings. It had released enormous amounts of invisible radioactive material into the air. As the fireball rose over Hiroshima, it carried dust, ash, smoke, and radioactive particles high into the atmosphere. When those particles mixed with moisture inside the dark clouds, they fell back to Earth as black rain. The rain wasn't poison in the way people imagined. It wasn't a chemical. It wasn't a disease. It carried radioactive fallout. Tiny invisible particles that people couldn't see, couldn't smell, and couldn't taste. Some breathed them in. Some swallowed them with the rain. Others were exposed as the contaminated water touched open burns and wounds. For many survivors, the danger had only just begun. The explosion had lasted seconds. The radiation would last much longer. And over the months and years, the true cost of Hiroshima would become impossible to ignore. Because surviving the bomb did not always mean surviving its aftermath. A word meaning bomb-affected people. They carried memories few could imagine. Many also carried fear. Not only fear of illness, but fear of rejection. Some faced discrimination. Employers worried they would become too sick to work. Some families feared marrying a Hibakusha because they believed, often incorrectly, that radiation exposure itself could somehow be passed to future generations. Many survivors stayed silent. They hid where they had been. They hid what they had seen. Because surviving had become another burden. Yet others chose a different path. They spoke. They told the world what happened. Not to seek revenge, but to make sure it would never be forgotten. Their testimonies revealed horrors that statistics never could. Children calling for parents who would never answer. Families searching through ashes. A city erased in seconds. And black rain falling from a sky that looked almost peaceful. Even today, scientists continue studying the effects of the atomic bombings. Researchers have learned a great deal about radiation exposure from the long-term health studies of survivors. The story of Hiroshima is not only about destruction. It is about endurance. About ordinary people forced to live through something the world had never witnessed before. On that August morning, many believed surviving the explosion meant they were safe. Then the black rain began to fall. They welcomed it. They trusted it. They believed it had come to save them. Instead, it became one of the most haunting symbols of Hiroshima. Because sometimes, the greatest danger isn't the one you can see. It's the one that falls quietly from the sky. The people of Hiroshima survived the brightest flash in human history. But for many, the darkest chapter began after the rain. And that is why the story of Hiroshima isn't only about the bomb. It's also about the invisible scars that remained long after the smoke had disappeared.